Hi, this is Martin, back with Bryan Shumsky, lead architect for the O4W project at RevUS. We're in Milton Keynes, and I'm really pleased that he's here to take us through some of the new features and benefits of O4W. Before I hand over to Bryan, though, I just want to cover a project that I got involved with way back when I was first learning O4W. I wanted a project that I could get my teeth into and that might be useful, so I created an employee self-service system. That proof of concept went to a client. The client took what I had achieved in O4W as a non-programmer. They extended it, hardened it, commercialized it, and that system is now being accessed by users at two of the planet's biggest internet companies, which is a great accolade for O4W, and it's a technology that I really like, and I'm really pleased that I've got Bryan with me here today to take us through what he's done in OpenInsight 10. So hello, Bryan.
Hello, Martin.
Before we actually get into the new features, just tell me why you went about building O4W and who it's written for.
Sure. O4W gives multi-value developers, OpenInsight developers, people with years of experience in Basic Plus and programming in OpenInsight, a way to generate web output without requiring them to learn JavaScript and HTML and CSS and the new technologies that enable the web to provide interactive responses. So we designed O4W for OI power users and OI developers. You don't need to program to generate output with O4W. You can use our wizard tools, which walks you through step by step and gives you access to your OpenInsight tables, your OpenInsight data, to generate inquiry forms, update forms, reports, graphical dashboards, and menus. And if you wanted to take the next step and you wanted to programmatically interact with that data, programmatically interact with the user on the browser, then that programming is done using Basic Plus. So it's a tool to give you developers, power users who are familiar with the OpenInsight environment entree to the web.
Cool, so that's why it fitted so well for my earlier project, because as a junior programmer I could use the graphical tools, but then the professional developers have taken it on and extended it using the programming language.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, so come on, show me what you've been doing in the new version.
So I think the thing that's most exciting about OpenInsight 10's changes to O4W is our new WYSIWYG form development tool. In O4W 1.0, we had the ability to generate forms using the form wizard, and those allowed you to specify the fields you wanted to show on the form and then controlled the layout. The form wizard itself decided how things would be laid out. With the O4W WYSIWYG form designer tool, you have more control over how you want the forms to be laid out. In addition, the O4W WYSIWYG tool also is compatible with mobile devices. It can generate output for either desktop or mobile browsers. So the first thing we'll do is we'll log in. Now, if you haven't yet watched our earlier video on setting up and configuring O4W in the engine server, now's a good time to do that, because if you don't have your engine server running, none of this is going to work. But assuming you've got that keyed in properly and running, at this point we'll enter the user we designated as the O4W/OpenInsight user, Martin, and the appropriate password. And then we can click on the Create/Modify choice for the O4W WYSIWYG form. The first step is to choose File and New. And at this point we can choose the type of form we wish to generate. If we wanted to do all of the data manipulation, all of the interaction with the user via Basic Plus programming, we could just use the WYSIWYG form to lay out our screen and then control the elements programmatically. And in that case, you'd select form layout only. However, in our case, we want to mimic a form that Martin's already got. So we'll choose the OI form mode. The OI form mode, like an OpenInsight desktop form, prompts you for entering the information into the key field, and then when focus is lost, it populates the rest of the form's data. The other 5 choices first create what we call a collector window to ask the user for the key field or the fields that they want to search on. And if more than one record matches, displays a list of matching records from which they can then drill down to the particular record. Again, as we said, we're going to use the OI form mode. And then we say which table we want to use. Martin's table is called MP Patients. If at any point you get confused in the quick form process, you can click on the help link where more information will be provided. It tells you what you need to do at this point. We need to select the fields that we want to put on our form. Now it's okay if you forget some, because you can always view them later on. But certainly it's more convenient to only choose the form elements that you're going to use. So I believe we're going to use the address, the approximate age, the county, the DOB, and I'm selecting these by holding down the control key and clicking on the field names. I could also use the shift key if I wanted to select a block of them at a time. Forenames, gender, patient number, postcode, surname, title, and town. Then I click on OK. Now at this point, I have to reorder the fields so that they appear in the proper order we'd like them displayed on the form. You can move them around, but it's certainly easiest to get them right in the first place. So I will click on a field and then drag it to the appropriate location. And as we can see, I've moved patient number to the top. I'm also going to move the title, the forenames, and the surname to the top. These are all going to be in the general non-tab specific area of the form. So I'd select where these go, and everything that follows it is going to be in the same area. We'll now have a tab for our patient details, and it's going to start with the DOB. So we're going to put that on the next tab. After the DOB, we'll have the approximate age, then the gender, and the address, then county, town, and postcode. And we can control the type of fields that these are going to be as well. We can choose from any of these different types: a text box, list box, checkbox, radio buttons, plain text for a display-only field, date or time pickers, or a toggle, which is just a fancy radio button, if you will. If you specify something that requires additional details, like a list box or checkbox or a radio button, you will fill them in when the form is itself drawn. But as a first pass, we can leave everything as text boxes except for the DOB, which it picked up as a date picker. We can control whether or not we want the labels next to the fields, above the fields, or use inline prompting. We can check if we don't want to use any tabs, and we can also check if we want to use a classic user interface as opposed to the more modern user interface that's now been released. Once you've clicked on all the information, reordered it as you wish, you can hit the Generate Form button. Here we see the form as it has been initially generated. If we click on any of the elements, we can display their properties. So if I clicked here on the ID field, we can see the text box properties off to the right. Although you can tab through the various properties there, it's much easier to click the open folder icon so that it's displayed on the middle of the screen. And here you can specify any of the details you want. Most of the defaults should be appropriate. If you wanted to change anything, you could change it and then save, or you can then hit cancel. If I click in the tab information to get the tab properties, I can pull that out, and then I can change the tab name to be patient details. I could add additional tabs if they were defined. One of the interesting features is that O4W WYSIWYG form designer knows that sometimes fields are linked together. So if I click on the approximate age field, that's a literal, and I check its events, there's nothing you can do to it because it's the target of a change. If I went into the DOB field and looked at its events, I have the option to say when this field changes, update a target. Let's blow this out again so you can see. Update the approximate age when the DOB changes. So other times where you might do this is where you've got, for example, a URL or an email field, and you want to be able to still click on the email or click on the URL. So you allow the users to enter the information and then have it automatically update a plain text field that is the link to the email or the link to the URL. Without any programming at all, then those fields are tied together. Let's go in and clean some of these things up. For example, DOB, we probably wanted to say instead date of birth. Approximate age is still all right. Gender is good. We see from the drawing here that this is in its own little section. Address is in its own little section. It's a table because address is a multi-valued field. O4W picked that up when it was laying it out, and so it gives you multiple lines of address information. We could also choose to rearrange some of these things so that instead of being side by side, labels side by side with the names, they could be over under if we feel that that would be a more appropriate layout. And all this is just done with drag and drop.
So before, in version 9 when I was working with this, I just had two columns, one for the label and one for the control.
Exactly.
We've actually got more now.
Yes, you do. We allow you to specify up to 12 columns, which, while not infinite, is still clearly more complete than what you had before.
And it gives me so much more flexibility in the screen layout.
Correct.
Brilliant.
You can also choose to examine and change properties for the overall page by clicking the Edit Page Properties button at the bottom. You can also get to it from the menu Edit option, Current Page Properties. Here you can verify that it did indeed select the proper key field and specify what you want the various buttons to do. We automatically created buttons for you, save, cancel, and delete, but you can call them anything you want, and if you created new buttons, you would go back in and tell O4W's page what to do when you clicked on them. It knows as an OI form to support QBF, so at this point we can save this. And we're going to call this Patients. The WYSIWYG form lets you test draw the form. It doesn't actually pull up the data, but it does let you see what it looks like if it renders in the browser. So this is what it's going to look like on a desktop browser. There's our QBF menu. And similarly, we could also test draw it as a mobile device. Now, I'm not really certain how well it's going to render on the IE browser. Let's take this out of full screen mode, shrink it a bit. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell how it's going to render on the IE browser. But it does realize that it's in non-columnar mode, and it actually does draw those as mobile fields. So if we go back to the main form, we can exit to the menu. Yes, we want to leave. And we can choose to run our WYSIWYG. Do it in another tab. There's the patients. So I believe you have patient number 1, for example.
Yep.
And if I tab off of it, yes, I don't know where that message has come from. It's now filled in the various information. Obviously, these fields are codes. We didn't actually change that, so we just use using plain text. Do you have code records that support them?
Yeah.
You do? Well then, let's make that change. Yes, let's leave. Let's go back into the WYSIWYG, create modify. So now we can say file open and select our patient's form. So title really shouldn't be a text box. That's not very handy. It should instead be either a list box or radio buttons. What do you have on your main form? Do you have it as
Drop-down.
You have it as a drop down.
Combo box.
So let's change it by taking the field and hitting the change button. And it wants to know, change it from a text box to a list box. Yes, change please. So now it's become a list box. But we have to say where the source for the list items has to come from. And we have a number of choices. We provide some standard codes. We let you specify a stored procedure you wanted to pull the values from, or in this case, they're going to come from a codes table or a codes record. So in this case, it's stored as a particular record in a table. And the table name is MP System Codes, and the record that contains the codes is people_titles. The code values are in field 1, and the code descriptions are in field 2. We can hit the save button there. We can go ahead and file, save it, and even file test draw it, and let's see if that works. Nope, must have had titles backwards in which field was which. Let's go back in there, change the properties. The codes must be in field 2 and the description is in field 1. Save it and try it again. And there they are. Gender is going to be the same way. We need to change gender so that it is not a text box, but is instead radio buttons, if you'd like.
Yep.
All right, so change to radio buttons. Actually, I think we call it a radio button set because we're doing multiple radio buttons, not one at a time. We say yes, change, and it's going to ask us again, where does the data come from? Let's pop that out so we can more easily change it. And it's going to again be tables with a specific code record. And it's going to be MP system codes. And this time it's going to be people underscore gender, I believe. And if we've learned anything, it should be 2 and 1. We might need to give ourselves a little bit more room there, but let's test draw it and see. Yes, there are our genders. They're all there, that's correct. However, clearly we don't want them to be up and down. We'd like to change them so that they are horizontal. So, let's see, can we do that? Well, of course we do. Horizontal layout, yes. If we say save, give ourselves a little bit more room. Once again, we still may have to lay this out a little bit. Let's drag this down so that that has a little bit more room in it. File, view the desktop, and there they are. If we go back in now and save this, we can then exit again to the main menu and run it. So if we call up again patient 1, you see he's a Mr. Martin Phillips, date of birth 1967, approximate age 50, a male with an address of Boundary House. Is that all correct?
Looks good to me.
Let's call up QBF, initialize. So let's look, do we have any women in there? I don't know what your test data looks like.
Don't know. Try Mrs.
Mrs. All right, QBF, execute. There's the one, Mrs. Daisy Duck. Born in 1987, approximate age 31. Let's go ahead and change her to be born a long time ago. Well, no, let's change it. Let's make her a very young woman. Born May 10th, 2016. She's now 2 years old. So you can see that by changing the date of birth field, the approximate age automatically updated. Again, nothing was required on our part to do that. At any point for any of these fields, if we wanted to have them trigger calls into OpenInsight for us to change things programmatically, we can do that. The first thing we'd have to do is edit the overall form properties so that it knows that we want to have a commuter module. If we specify yes, create a commuter module for us, it comes up with a name automatically if the name's been defined. We can specify which events on the overall form we want to get called on. And now our fields also have additional options for the events. We can tell it to call the commuter module when we enter the field, when the value changes, or when we exit the field. The O4W WYSIWYG wizard will create the form initially for you, if you ask it to, and populate it with the skeleton of the commuter module. And at this point, it's all just a matter of going through and getting the other fields in there that you'd want, laying them out as you'd like, changing their relationships if you wish. You know.
So things like with the agenda, where you've got that scroll bar at the side, that's simply because it's too shallow at the moment, is it?
The agenda. What do you mean?
Sorry, the agenda.
Oh, yes.
Where you've got that scroll bar.
Yeah, it doesn't quite fit there. And actually, if we look at that field, I believe there was an option in the format to say scroll the content if it's too big. If we say no, just clip it there and save it. We say file, save. It's going to ask us if we want to build a commuter module. We don't have any events in there, but we can say sure. It's been generated. If we refresh this page, well, actually, let's just go and make sure the URL is correct. Yes, I'm sure I want to leave. It now draws it without the scrolling bar. We lose the bottom line under gender because we didn't give quite enough room for that. But if you're happy with that, then that's okay.
Yeah, the new version's giving you a lot more control over the interface now, which
I
is
think
really
so.
nice.
Yeah, especially when you consider that you still have the options to apply a style sheet to this. You specify a template, which if you'll recall is an HTML document with pieces cut out where the dynamic content goes. But you can use this template to provide a consistent look and feel across multiple pages. You can really dress these up and make them look, very stylish. I am not known for my style particularly. I believe in plain text.
Well, we're looking at the functionality more than anything else.
Correct.
Today. So, I mean, it's just having the extra columns and the extra control is going to be quite a big thing for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Now that it's set up for you on your system, we can expect to see more O4W presentations on your data coming soon.
Definitely. Well, let me get the desktop one finished, and then I will be doing a complete getting started tutorial series on O4W. So, and now I've seen this, I'm actually getting quite excited about doing that one.
Super.
Okay, so what else have we got planned for O4W going forward? Have we got anything in the pipeline?
Well, at this point, since we've just released OpenInsight 10 a few months ago, we're still in the tweaking phase. We're getting feedback from customers as they're starting to use it. Obviously, there are going to be some minor bug fixes with each minor release that we put out. So we don't have anything as big as the WYSIWYG designer in the pipeline. It's more just a matter at this point of getting everything running and taking in users' comments and implementing them as possible.
Cool, that's really good. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I found that really interesting, and it's looking like we've got a very, very good desktop system backed up by a equally as good web system now. So yeah, I'm looking forward to carrying on with the videos, the tutorials, which I'll be back with the next one very soon. In the meantime, I'd like to thank Bryan for taking some time out to meet with me in the UK and for taking us through the features and benefits of O4W and OI10. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Catch you later.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.